Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Clean Coast's October Lunch and Learn event. My name is Christina Lopez, and I'm the Coastal Coordinator for Clean Coast Texas at the Meadow Center for Water and the Environment. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to get us started. First, I want to go over a few housekeeping things, and then we'll do some introductions. So please be sure to stay muted throughout the event. This will really help us with sound quality. You're welcome to have your video on or off, whatever you prefer. If you have any questions during or after the presentation, please put them in the chat box. And also using the chat box, if you would like to go ahead and introduce yourself right now, you could share your name, your organization, and what brings you to the Lunch and Learn today. I would like to first introduce my colleague, Allie. Allie, can you come on and introduce yourself, please?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Allie Schlant. I am the Program and Outreach Specialist at the Meadow Center for Water and the Environment, and I work closely with Christina and Jason Pinchback in the GLO, implementing the Clean Coast Texas program and a couple of other projects with the GLO, and I'll be here to kind of help make sure this runs smoothly today. So I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Allie. Allie is going to be placing some helpful information in the chat box as well, so you'll see her name pop out throughout the event. Now I would like to introduce Jason Pinchback from the General Land Office. Jason?
Good morning. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Allie. We're excited about today's Lunch and Learn. But first, a little bit of information about Clean Coast Texas. We are an initiative of the Texas Coastal Non-Point Source Pollution Program, which is guided by the General Land Office Coastal Management Program in partnership with numerous stakeholders, including state and local agencies. We work with local communities to facilitate non-regulatory, incentive-based programs and projects to protect and restore water quality and non-point source pollution. So we're here to support your efforts to educate residents, to assist in community planning, pursue and implement grants, develop drainage and water quality criteria, and build projects that reduce pollution and support your local community and their needs. So please don't be shy about putting Clean Coast Texas to work. We are currently seeking partnerships, and please reach out to me direct or to Christina Lopez as well with your interest, so we can figure out if we have some common ways that we can work together to better manage non-point source pollution. And now to our featured speaker, Mr. Andrew Sullivan with the Water Quality Planning Division at the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Andrew is a surface water quality monitoring program team leader and is responsible for the oversight and management of statewide water quality monitoring network. He is also responsible for compiling and drafting the assessment of water quality for the development of the integrated report for the Clean Water Act sections 305B and 303D. Andrew has 26 years of state service within the water quality management programs at the TCEQ. He started with the agency working with water quality standards program, implementing and developing water quality standards. In 2001, he began working with the TMDL program as a project manager addressing water quality impairments and overseeing water quality assessment projects. Andrew has prior experience performing aquaculture research at Mississippi State University and toxicity projects with Chesapeake Bay. He received a BA in biology from the University of Delaware and an MS in wildlife and fisheries from Louisiana State University. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Andrew Sullivan.
Thank you, Jason. Good morning to everybody. So I'd like to share my screen and get this presentation up. Let's see.
Great. Well, we can see and hear you, and we'll let you know when the screen is up and ready.
All right.
And while you're getting that loaded, I wanted to remind folks that just joined to please remain muted. Video on or off is fine. And if you would like, you can introduce yourself in the chat. Any questions during or after the presentation, we'll be pulling from the chat as well.
There we go. You've transitioned to your screen.
Okay.
And we're not in presentation mode yet.
Okay, I will start the presentation. Okay. Is that now, can you see it in slide presentation now?
Yes, sir, but your notes are also on this particular display, but you are presenting.
Okay. Notes. All right. So I can I take the notes off?
It might be in the display settings on the carrot and the yeah, right in that area. There might be an option. I'm not familiar with this particular screen. Might need to hit escape
Okay.
to get out of this mode here. Let's see if that does it for you. There we go. And then in the bottom right hand corner next to the zoom, there's a small button that is the display button for PowerPoint. It's right next to the minus symbol on the bottom right hand corner. Right next to the minus symbol in the bottom right. So in the displays, there you go. Just below that, it seems like it gone into another mode here. There it is. Yeah, right there.
Okay.
Oh, well, we're back to.
All right. Can I do it like this?
Yes, sir. We're ready. It's looking great.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jason. And what I'd like to do is I don't usually get to present like this. And usually when I do this presentation, it's for the entire state. And I present the information for the integrated report or the 303D list for the entire state. But this is a unique opportunity to provide information just for a specific zone, specific area for the coastal zone. So how I would like to lay this out is I'm going to talk a little bit about the background for the integrated report and then go into a little bit about the process we use to go about developing the integrated report. And then I want to try to finalize and end with some of the results specifically for the coastal zone and how we came up with some of the final results and how those looked comparisons to the over time for the previous integrated reports. So with that, I can go on to the presentation. Well, basically, when we look at the integrated report and what the integrated report is, the integrated report of surface water quality, it's a statewide assessment of the status of the state waters over a given period of time. And typically we use a 7 to 10 year period to look at that. And it's essentially a snapshot in time of the status of waters. It compares water quality data to the currently approved standards, water quality standards, which are developed by rule by the TCEQ. And based on that comparison, it identifies waters that are not meeting water quality standards and then includes those on the specific list of what's known as the 303D list. We conduct this assessment every 2 years. And as far as meeting the requirements of the Clean Water Act, the draft is adopted by TCEQ and it's due to EPA on the April 1st of even numbered years. And that's a pretty tight schedule to get this entire process done. And I'll get into the whole process, but that's a pretty tight schedule. And so why do we do this? Well, it's legislatively required. It's based on state law, Title 30 of the Texas Administrative Code and for the state law, and then the Federal Clean Water Act, sections 305B and 303D. For those of you who don't know, this week was the 30th or the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act. So, back in 1972, the Clean Water Act was formally written into law. So that's some time ago. Some of us do remember that. So at the most basic level, the assessment that we perform includes 3 different parts: parameters and data, methods and criteria, and beneficial uses. We take the data, which was collected by partners, TCEQ, and various other entities. That data is incorporated in a database and then extracted from the database and then applied to methods and criteria, which is established in our guidance and procedures. The guidance and procedures are developed by a group of stakeholders and updated every 2 years. So this is done in public, and so everybody knows what to do. And the criteria is taken from the water quality standards, the most approved water quality standards. And based on that, we evaluate the beneficial uses. So it's all can be encompassed right here. So we're able to establish which beneficial uses are supported based on the data and which are not. And we get to that through identifying those on the through those waters which have supported beneficial uses are not on the 303D list. And based on this, we can categorize the water bodies based on their use support. We categorize water bodies in 1, 2, and 3. These categories identify in 1, 2, and water bodies and categorized in categories 1, 2, and 3 are water bodies that are meeting water quality standards or don't have enough data or are not assessed. So these water bodies are considered meeting water quality standards or not assessed due to insufficient data. Moving to category 4, this is where we have category. This category identifies water bodies that are actually impaired, and this is category 4 is divided into 3 separate categories. Category 4A is where a TMDL has been developed and approved and is currently ongoing. And then category 4B is where something else besides a TMDL is underway, and standards are expected to be met in a reasonable amount of time. And then category 4C is the impairment or threat is not caused by a pollutant. So TMDL or some other control measure cannot control the impairment. And then category 5 represents the 303D list, those waters that are not meeting water quality standards and are in need of a TMDL. So this is divided into 4 separate categories. Category 5A is where a TMDL is underway or being planned. And then 5B are those waters that we're looking at the standards or standards just being developed before a management strategy is selected. 5C represents those waters where additional data or information is needed before we can select a management strategy. And then for 5N, we have a new category that was established as part of the 2022 integrated report, where the water body does not meet chlorophyll A criterion, but additional study is needed before we can identify a path forward. This primarily deals with reservoirs for the 2022 integrated report. So as I talked about the process for developing the integrated report, it's a tight process to get everything done within the 2 years. It begins with developing the guidance I talked about, and that's developed among a group of stakeholders with input on the methods that we develop and any ideas about new methods we may want to bring into the process. We compile the data that's collected over the 7 to 10 year period and make sure all that data is reasonable. We then run the assessment, that part where we take the data and compare it to criteria and the methods to evaluate the beneficial uses. Based on those analyses and those assessments, we were able to develop reports, detailed reports for each of the water bodies, on each of the parameters to show which water bodies are meeting and which are not, and then also get into the specifics of the different criteria that are being met. This information is provided for public comment, for input from the public. We're able to take that input and address the comments and make any changes necessary, and then revise the documents as necessary. This information goes for TCEQ approval for the commission agenda, and then finally EPA approval. One point of note here is that the integrated report is not determined to be final. It's draft all the way up until EPA approval. So when TCEQ approves the integrated report, it's still considered draft. The current status of the 2022 integrated report, the draft was adopted by TCEQ on June 1st, 2022, and it was approved by EPA on July 12th. So the current 2022 integrated report is considered the official one for regulatory purposes. So I want to get into a little bit of talk about some of the specific methods for the coastal area. One of those would be for the recreational beaches. The recreational beaches is one of those methods where we don't actually use the data, but we use the information from the Beach Watch program. And at the most basic level, we evaluate the number of swimming advisory days at coastal beaches. And like I said, this uses the information from the Texas GLO Beach Watch program, and attainment support of the beneficial use, which is swimming beach, is based on the percentage of advisory days over the period of record. And when it's less than 20%, the beneficial use or beach use is determined to be fully supporting or to remove from the 303D list. It's 20 to 25% of the time it's a use concern, and that's a type of attainment where it's not exactly impaired, but it's not fully supporting. And then if it's greater than 25% of the time, it's considered not supporting, and it's on the 303D list. So another contact recreation is another beneficial use we evaluate in the coast. This gets into some detail about the actual criteria that's used for the different water body types that are on the coast. And when we look at recreational criteria, we look at it in a couple of different ways. We look at it in terms of geometric means and single sample exceedances. Geometric means are just comparisons of the means of the data collected, and single sample criteria is looked at number of exceedances and a certain number of exceedances over the data set. So looking over the different water body types, tidal streams have a couple different levels of recreational use criteria, with recreational use categories with associated criteria. Primary contact recreation 1, secondary contact recreation 1, and non-contact recreation 1 each has its separate category, all geometric means. And then for estuaries, just has primary contact recreation 1 and non-contact recreation. For oceans, primary contact recreation 1. Freshwater wetlands actually has a recreational use, beneficial use of primary contact recreation 1, and that's based on E. coli. The rest of these are all enterococcus. Saltwater wetlands has a primary contact recreation 1. This next one I have for tidal streams represents those waters that are ship canals, so they're identified as non-contact recreation, but they still have to meet the 35 enterococcus criteria. And this is basically due to safety concerns with recreation in barge ship channels. And then finally, what I just talked about was the beach use, coastal beaches and estuaries in basins 24 and ocean and the Gulf basin 25, and it uses the 104 enterococcus, the beach action value number. like I said, but we don't actually use that data, but we use the information from the GLO Beach Watch program as of the number of advisory days. One of the other ones is the evaluation of oyster water beneficial use, and this is based on the DSHS shellfish classification maps and the online viewer, and we look at the growing area classifications from this viewer, and used reports based on the approval status of the different classification areas. So approved would be fully supporting, conditionally approved will also be fully supporting, and then get into non-support restricted areas where it's due to poor water quality, and then due to reasons other than poor water quality would be non-assessed. Prohibited areas would be not supporting if there's a sanitary survey indicating poor water quality, and prohibited areas due to reasons other than poor water quality or no sanitary survey would be non-assessed. So you would only end up with a non-support if it was restricted or prohibited with a sanitary survey. And then finally, one final one would be the fixed consumption beneficial use. These are based on DSHS risk characterizations that identify fish consumption bans and advisories. So whenever DSHS issues a ban or advisory, that area is identified as not supporting. And in some cases, DSHS will issue a conductive risk characterization where they do not issue a ban or advisory, and that will be a fully supporting, that would the water body would be fully supporting for fish consumption. So some results for the 2022 integrated report. This is a spatial representation of the coast and how the impairments lay out for categories 4 and 5. They're distributed along the coastal zone. The large area for the Gulf represents the mercury impairments. The Gulf is, the entire Gulf is impaired for mercury in fish tissue, so that's why the entire area there is impaired. The Laguna Madre has an impairment for dissolved oxygen, so that's why that area is red. But we have areas that are identified as category 4 up around Houston and throughout the coast. So there are activities going on to restore water quality in some of these areas as well. So looking at some of the details about the integrated report for categories 4 and 5 and the impairments in the coastal zone, and this is a breakdown of the percentages of the different water body types throughout the coastal zone. For ocean, for each of the categories, category 4, there's 0% in category 4, although 100% are in category 5 for the ocean. Estuaries, it's just below 50% in category 5. Some of the water bodies are in category 4, a small percentage, under 1%. For streams, stream miles, under 25% are in category 5. Just more than 6% are in category 4. For oyster waters, we've only there's just under 6%, and just under 12% are in category 4. And then recreational beaches, a little over 5% of the water bodies assessed are impaired, and a little over, and 1% of recreational beaches are in category 4. So there's some activities here ongoing to restore the beach use throughout the coast. And then reservoir acres, there's just under 5% impaired throughout the coastal zone. Looking at the total numbers of impairments throughout the coastal zone for the 2022 integrated report, in category 5, we can look at the highest numbers are represented by the fish tissue impairments, PCBs and dioxins in fish tissue. So there's 95 and 83% respectively, PCBs and dioxins. represent the highest numbers of impairments along the coastal zone. Next would be the bacteria, and then depressed dissolved oxygen, 41 impairments. And these are represented by assessment units. And I guess I should point out the assessment units are smaller portions of entire segments identified in the water quality standards. And then mercury in tissue, 12 assessment units, bacteria and oyster waters 10, and then down to impaired biological communities where we only have one in each of the fish and benthic communities impaired. So quite a wide range of impairments throughout the coastal zone in category 5. So looking at in category 4, quite a few uneven distribution, mostly in bacteria and bacteria and water. There's a lot of ongoing activity trying to restore the recreational uses primarily in the Houston area. So a lot of category 4 water bodies to deal with bacteria and water there. Bacteria and oyster waters, a number of TMDL activities in category 4. Most of these deal with bacteria with TMDL activities. Depressed dissolved oxygen, there's 10 there, on down to chloride, sulfate, and TDS. These are mostly deal with, I think, the impairments in Petronella Creek. These are the impairments in category 4. And then mercury in edible tissue, there's 1, and then zinc. This is the zinc in Nueces Bay, and then low pH in water. So we can look at some differences between the two integrated reports, 2020 and 2022, to get an idea if there's any changes. This is not always the best thing to do because between integrated reports, there are some changes in the methods and the criteria, but sometimes you can get an idea of whether things are getting better, things are getting worse. But between 20 and 22, we've seen some very small changes in terms of bacteria and water. Those numbers have gone down, but they've stayed pretty constant for the rest of these. Bacteria in oyster waters, and then fish community has stayed pretty much the same. Macrobenthic communities stay the same. There's some increases in bacteria and water, decreases in TDS. The rest of these stay pretty much the same. Some increases in the fish tissue impairments have gone up a little bit. This has mostly been the result of the reclassifications, and some of our spatial data has caused some of these to increase. And then toxicity in water and toxicity in sediment has stayed the same between the 2 years for the assessment units. So not much change between the two assessments, which is good, and to see things go down is also good. And to look at that on a spatial representation, we can see the water bodies broken out here. Things in orange moved from category 5 to 4. There's a few things moved from 5 to 4, moved off the 303D list into TMDLs. Along here, the purple boxes, there's been eight water bodies moved onto the list, so that's not very many along this whole area, but mostly concentrated up in this area up here. So eight new additions to the 303D list in the category 5 here. But for the most part, there has been very few changes in this entire area. So that's pretty much a good thing to see from a year to year change. So that's what I have for the coastal zone. Like I said, that was an interesting thing to see, just to focus on a specific area and not not have to try to evaluate the entire state and give details. And then it was a really good change. But I'd take any questions if anybody had any.
Well, thank you so much, Andrew, for your presentation and sharing the information from the latest review. And it was great to get a coastal zone specific perspective. I was wondering if you would be able to exit from your presentation mode. In this particular mode, some of the graphics were the detail was a little bit hard to see. So maybe escape will get you there. And I was wondering if you would go back to that last map that you had up with some of the changes. Maybe we can zoom in on that. If there is a way to zoom in on that any more than it is right now.
I was hoping I could.
And see if we can get some detail from that particular one. A couple of things strike me in your presentation is the vast amount of information that you must be looking at from the various sources and all the different watershed-based programs that are being implemented right now in response to the integrated list and the assessment. And if you can't zoom in, that's fine as well. Some of the detail was lost in that particular presentation mode, but we can make it available after the fact as well, so that someone, if they wanted to go through and look at the presentation in a little bit more detail, we'll have that posted in the follow-up email from this particular event.
If I could interrupt for a second, if you see on the drop-down panel that just came, towards the right says monitor automatic. It says use presenter view. If you could uncheck that box.
Over here.
Correct. So go down to where it says monitor automatic, then right beneath that, there's a checkbox that's checked and it says use presenter view. So maybe uncheck that box.
Okay.
And then do the slideshow from the beginning or from current slide and see if it goes full screen.
Doesn't seem to be doing that.
So perhaps we'll kind of shift here, and I've scrolled through the chat box, and we've got some great introductions there, but not seeing any questions. And so I'll maybe try to get us rolling a little bit on just a comment and an observation. Andrew, you've been doing this work for quite a long time. You indicated 26 years there at the agency, and I was wondering, in that time you've seen a lot of change and changes in technology, changes in all kinds of different aspects of water quality. Are there anything, any instances or occurrences or things that you've noted over time have changed, whether it's associated with the water or working in the agency or partnerships, or just generally speaking?
I think there's been probably a great degree in the sharing of information between different programs. We provide information between the different water quality management programs, between the work we do with assessing and identifying impairments, with the TMDL programs who works with restoring and resolving the impairments, along with the standards program who works with identifying and changing and revising standards. I think those working together with all those groups has really improved the way the entire process works as a whole. And I think we're able to we've really realized some benefits from that in terms of being able to improve the way we do our work.
Yeah, collaboration and partnership and all the diverse resources that are out there are a major benefit when bringing together project focus and trying to accomplish something. I'd like to ask Christina, it looks like we do have some questions in the box. If you could lead us through those, please.
Yeah, so thank you for your question. So the first one is, can you please talk more about category 5C It sounds like it should be a temporary category while data is collected, but for example, the Gulf of Mexico has been listed as 5C for mercury since 1998.
Well, yeah, 5C should be a temporary one where we do collect more data information. Data and information about that specific impairment is difficult to collect on at a lot of, in many instances, and trying to find a strategy to I guess restore that condition can be time consuming and resource intensive. When we do impairments for fish tissue, it requires Department of State Health Services to do those risk characterizations. For them to do risk characterizations for mercury along the entire coast, we have to do, we need to contract with them to do those, and it takes a number of years to do those. Those have not come up as a priority as of yet, but we hope to get those as a priority, possibly, as time goes on.
Thanks so much, Andrew. The next question is from Sean. Can you please let us know if any water quality metrics are improving? If so, what and where? If not, why not?
Water quality metric. I guess like in that last slide, we demonstrated that some of the bacteria numbers or the numbers of bacteria impairments were going down, but like I said, that's mostly due to implementing new TMDLs and water bodies moving from category 4 and 5. However, also it indicated that the integrated report is a snapshot, and it's very hard to tell whether things are getting better or not from the integrated report, since we're not, it's hard to track changes and identify trends using the integrated report. There's other methods to do that, to determine whether things are getting better or worse, but that's the focus of the integrated report, is really just to provide a snapshot of the water quality in that point in time, and it's very difficult.
Thank you, Andrew. We have another question from Norris. Please provide further explanation regarding increases in PCBs and dioxin. You mentioned it might be methodology. What about ongoing point source pollution?
Well, when we do the studies, we don't really identify. The integrated report evaluates ambient water quality, and we try to avoid point source sources of pollution when we collect our data and identify our monitoring stations. So the data we do collect is collected what is considered at ambient water quality stations. And so we want to get a perspective of what water quality is from ambient perspective. So we really can't tell with a great deal of precision of whether it's point source or non-point source. We can only in very few cases can we identify whether it's point source or specific sources that's causing the impairment. As far as the PCBs and dioxin goes, those are typically done collecting fish tissue and specimens of fish by DSHS, and then performing risk characterizations and issuing fish advisory to the bans. So those target collect fish across an entire water body. So it's very difficult to identify specific areas, specific point sources that may be causing those problems. It would require a much more intensive study to look at the specific point sources that would be contributing or increasing those levels in fish tissue.
Thank you, Andrew. We have another question from Lee. Can you speak to any plans or timeline for adopting nutrient assessment standards in Texas?
Nutrient assessment standards. Well, we do have some nutrient criteria established for some Texas reservoirs in the state, but right now we don't. The Water Quality Standards has a nutrient assessment work group which convenes. I'm not sure what the schedule exactly is for that work group, but they would be driving that schedule and the development and approval of those criteria. So, but for now, we do assess the criteria. We do have approved. We do have established methods for in the guidance that I spoke of earlier. We do have methods and procedures for evaluating the criteria that's approved in the guidance for the reservoirs that have the approved nutrient criteria. So if anybody's interested in that process, the nutrient advisory work group would be the place to find more information about that.
Thank you. All right, we've got another question that just came in. Why does the map only show worsening of water quality? Are there no instances of water bodies becoming cleaner?
Like I said, once, like I indicated before, this is a snapshot. It's hard to tell what's getting better and what's getting worse from just looking at water quality over this one period of time. Having to trying to look at trends based on 5 to 7 year period for the 2022 integrated report would be doesn't seem to be realistic. A more in-depth evaluation of numerous integrated reports over time may be what you need to look at. But once again, looking at that causes some issues with respect to changing methods, changing criteria, and of that sort. So it may not show a complete record when you're trying to look at improving water quality or worsening water quality.
Great. Thank you so much, Andrew. We do have another question that says, is this data shared with anyone at the TCQ Enforcement Division where they might be able to identify a specific point source and then implement a corrective action plan?
We do share the information with the monitoring division, and they do use this information to target enforcement cases. One of our reports we do provide is a sources report. We do evaluate that as far as the impairments and concerns we identify. We do a high level evaluation of potential sources and causes of those impairments and concerns. So the enforcement and monitoring division, they do consider that report when they are looking at potential enforcement cases or evaluating sources of pollution in certain areas. We'll also work closely with the regional staff. The regional staff in the monitoring division has surface water quality monitoring personnel that collect the data for us and also do the investigations. And we work closely with them when necessary to identify problems in certain areas.
Hey, Andrew, while we're looking through the questions here and Christina is reviewing those, I was wondering if you could stop your screen share, and I'd like to share a map while we're having the discussion that highlights watershed-based plans in the coastal zone as well. Christina, do we still have some more questions?
Sorry, I was trying to make you a co-host so you could share your screen. Let's see. So we have from Sean again, understanding that this is a snapshot. If you can't point to anything improving, how can you point to worsening water quality?
Let's see. How can you point? I don't know if I really point to worsening. We can't really tell if it's getting better or getting any worse. So in terms of identifying worsening water quality or getting better. We can't do either thing. Like I said, being a snapshot and only looking at a very specific period of record point in time, you can't really look at better or getting worse. It would be great if we could do that. It would allow us to target specific areas where we need to go in and do work earlier, but with what we have, it only allows us to identify areas that are impaired now and plan restoration activities, TMDLs, and go to those areas and restore, remediate those specific areas.
All right, that's it for the questions coming in the chat box. Jason, if you wanted to talk about your screen for a second.
Sure, and this might help kind of fill in some of the gaps here in the questions. And so what we're looking at here is a map highlighting the coastal zone in Texas. There are a couple of features that are rather predominant on the map, and you'll notice the red hatched and orange hatched features. And these are representing watershed-based plans that are sponsored and funded by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality and Texas State Soil Water Conservation Board. And it's my understanding that, so we had some questions about responding to water quality issues. And it's part of my understanding of how this works is that there's a local community, there's a local interest, there's a local stakeholder driving attention towards water quality issues in their particular area, and then working together and collectively to seek funding, and then collaborating with various partner agencies such as Texas Water Resource Institute, such as Meadow Center for Water and the Environment, and river authorities. The list goes on and on. But one thing that strikes me with this particular picture is that there's quite a bit of these, whether they're watershed protection plans or total maximum daily load efforts, that are in response to some of the 303D or integrated report findings. Andrew, do you have any comments on that?
No, but well, yeah, as far as a lot of what we produce as far as the integrated report drives this process where many of these different programs use the integrated report to drive the planning and implementation of these projects. So like the TMDLs and the watershed protection plans refer to the integrated report to direct them to specific areas where the work needs to be done. So this is one really good example of how the information from the integrated report is used.
So with the Clean Coast Texas program, we've positioned ourselves with resources and collaborators to work with local communities in responding to water quality issues and non-point source issues. And sometimes this could be driven by the integrated report and the results of that, or it could also be driven by local interest. And so this is a good backdrop, and it's been a great discussion, Andrew. We really do appreciate you sharing the information from the integrated report. I look forward to looking at the slides in more detail afterwards.
I apologize, that didn't work out too well. I'm not sure what happened, but I'm happy to provide the presentation for you to provide on the website or however to get it out to see more detail.
Fantastic. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for spending your time with us and expertise and sharing information. I'd also like to thank Christina Lopez and Ali Schland at Texas State University and Meadow Center for Water and the Environment for facilitating our event. And of course, all the participants who've chosen to join us today or listening after the fact. If you're interested in working on non-point source pollution water quality issues in your coastal zone town, please don't hesitate to contact Clean Coast Texas. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you being here. Take care.